My name is Alice Monroe. I'm 29, and on the night before my wedding, I walked into Murphy's Hall and saw my sister Chloe wearing my ivory gown hand-stitched pearls cathedral, train the one I saved 8 months to afford. She wasn't alone. Her arm was wrapped around my fiancé Nathan's, and together they smiled like it was their stage. Surprised, Chloe giggled, spinning in my dress. "We're eloping tonight!" My mother clapped her hands in delight. "She looks so much better in white than you ever would, Alice." The words cracked through me louder than the champagne corks popping in the background. Relatives raised their glasses, cameras flashed, and in a single heartbeat, the wedding I'd built piece by piece was stolen. But none of them knew what I carried in my phone. A truth so sharp it could cut this entire charade to pieces. What Chloe and Nathan didn't realize was that I had already uncovered the secret Nathan buried, and tonight I was ready to use it. The question was, should I let the truth explode here or wait until tomorrow's altar? Before I continue, tell me if your sister stole your fiancé. Would you confront them instantly or stay silent until the perfect moment? Drop your answer below and hit subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. The laughter in Murphy's Hall, the sting of my mother's voice, the sight of Chloe twirling in lace that was meant for me, it all cracked something inside. And as I stood there frozen, my mind slipped backward like a door opening into years I had tried to bury. I grew up in a small Midwestern town, the kind where everyone knew your last name and remembered every mistake you made. In our house, favoritism wasn't whispered about. It lived in every corner like wallpaper you couldn't peel away. Chloe, 2 years younger, was always the radiant one, the child with golden curls and a laugh that drew people like moths to flame. I was practical Alice, the dependable one. I remember Christmas morning when I was 8. I had carefully wrapped a drawing I'd made for Mom, a picture of our family under the oak tree in the backyard. Chloe unwrapped a dollhouse with working lights, a gift from Mom and Dad. Mom squealed, lifting her camera to capture Chloe's joy. My drawing. It slid to the side table without a glance, its edges curling by the fire's warmth. I told myself it didn't matter. That being the reliable one had its own kind of dignity. But still the paper cut deeper than I let anyone see. By high school, the roles were carved into stone. Chloe was the homecoming queen candidate, glowing in sequins, escorted by a line of boys eager to bask in her shine. I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at the library shelving books until my fingers were raw, another at Romano's Diner refilling coffee cups for tired truckers so I could save for college applications. Dad would pat my shoulder now, and then his way of saying he noticed. But Mom. Her eyes always followed Chloe. There was one night I'll never forget. Senior awards banquet at the gym strung with white fairy lights. I was honored for academic excellence called to the stage to accept a certificate. The applause was polite scattered. I searched the crowd for Mom's proud face, but she was turned toward Chloe, who was whispering with her friends about an upcoming party. Later that night, when I brought the certificate home and placed it on the mantel, Mom sighed. "Don't clutter the living room, Alice. Put it in your room." The mantel, of course, was already lined with Chloe's trophies from cheerleading. I swallowed the hurt and told myself recognition didn't matter. But deep inside, something was etching scars. Still, I carried on. College wasn't an option financially, not with Dad's factory job barely covering bills and Mom insisting Chloe needed help with pageant fees. So I took a different route. Community college courses at night, clerical training during the day. By 23, I was working full-time at the county clerk's office, the youngest in the department. I found solace in order forms, completed neatly records filed properly. Numbers and documents didn't play favorites. They didn't roll their eyes or tell me I was too practical to be pretty. It was in that routine life that Nathan Hale appeared. He was different from the men I'd grown up around. Polished, charming, with that easy smile that could convince anyone he belonged wherever he was. He came into the clerk's office one afternoon to process paperwork for a new business venture, as he called it. His confidence filled the room. While others might have been intimidated, I was curious. He lingered at my desk longer than necessary, cracking jokes, asking about the town. When he asked if I'd like coffee sometime, my first instinct was disbelief. Men like Nathan noticed Chloe, not me. But he did. At least it seemed that way. Our first date was simple, an old bookstore cafe tucked on Main Street. He ordered chamomile tea. I had my usual black coffee. We talked for hours about childhood dreams, about books we loved, about how he wanted to build something meaningful with his consulting work. For once, I felt seen. He wasn't just glancing past me toward someone brighter. His eyes were locked on mine, green and intent, like I was the only person in the world. I remember walking home that night, the autumn leaves crunching under my boots, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I thought maybe finally I'd found someone who saw beyond Chloe's shadow, but shadows are long, and Chloe always knew how to step back into the spotlight. I didn't realize then how much those early years, those dismissals, those invisible cuts were shaping the woman I'd become, the patience I would show, the red flags I would ignore, and I didn't know that the same patterns of favoritism would come back in a far crueler form just when I thought I'd finally built something of my own. The memory of that first autumn with Nathan is burned into me. He had a way of making ordinary moments shimmer, walking me home with his jacket draped over my shoulders, leaving little notes tucked into my mailbox at work, remembering details like the brand of pens I preferred. I told myself this was what love looked like: attentiveness, consistency, a steady hand in a world that had so often dismissed me. 6 months into dating, Nathan proposed. It was by Lake Harmon, the same place where we'd shared our first kiss. The water shimmered with the late summer sun, and when he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt something unshakable settle in me. A promise that maybe I wasn't destined to be second choice forever. Mom's reaction should have been joy. But when I called to tell her, there was a pause on the line, followed by her saying, "Nathan's handsome, but don't get your hopes too high, Alice. Men like him usually want someone with sparkle." She didn't need to say the name. Sparkle meant Chloe. And sure enough, Chloe's presence began to creep into our relationship like ivy up an old wall. She'd drop by during our dinner dates with urgent sisterly questions, linger too close to Nathan during family gatherings, offer unsolicited advice about managing him. Whenever I mentioned feeling uncomfortable, Mom brushed it aside. "She's just being friendly, Alice. Don't be so uptight." Still, I pushed forward. I worked extra shifts to help pay for the wedding. Every dollar went toward the gown, the venue, the caterer. Nathan promised he was contributing too, though his work always seemed vague, consulting here, networking there. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe the fairy tale was real. I can still feel the fabric of my wedding dress when I close my eyes. Ivory silk, hand-sewn pearl buttons, a cathedral train I'd chosen because it reminded me of Grace Kelly's photos. I'd visited the seamstress 3 times, perfecting the lace overlay until it felt like it was made for me. It was more than just fabric. It was proof that for once I was allowed to take up space to be the one celebrated. But even in those moments of joy, Chloe lingered. At a family dinner 2 months before the wedding, she raised her glass and said with a smirk, "Alice, you better watch out. Nathan has such great taste. Don't let him realize he picked the wrong Monroe sister." Laughter bubbled around the table. Mom chuckled, shaking her head. "Oh, Chloe, don't tease." But she didn't scold her either. She never did. I forced a smile, but inside the words carved a familiar wound. The same wound I'd carried since childhood, the reminder that no matter what I achieved, Chloe's shadow stretched further. Looking back, I see all the signs. Nathan's vague answers about his work trips, the way his phone always buzzed late at night and how he'd step outside to answer, the nervous flicker in his eyes when I asked about his past. But love made me blind. Or maybe desperation did. Desperation to believe I was finally chosen. I told myself everything was fine, that love required trust, that I was building something lasting. But as I stood in Murphy's hall watching Chloe twirl in my dress, Nathan pale beside her, I understood. The past wasn't just repeating. It was escalating. The favoritism, the betrayal, the invisible scars, they had all been leading to this night. And I was no longer the quiet girl who swallowed the pain. This time I carried proof. And when I decided to use it, everything would change. The first crack appeared not in Murphy's Hall, but 3 weeks earlier on an ordinary Tuesday morning at the county clerk's office. Autumn rain beat against the windows, streaking the glass with gray lines, while I sat at my desk sorting through marriage records, the same task I'd done 100 times before. That's when I saw his name. Nathan James Hale. The letters jumped off the page, bold against official county letterhead. For a split second, my brain tried to find a rational explanation. Another Nathan Hale. A clerical error. But the birth date matched. The parents' names matched. And then my eyes froze on the bride's name, Isabel Torres. The date of marriage, August 14th, 2 years ago. Phoenix, Arizona. My coffee mug trembled in my hand, splashing dark liquid across the document. I stared paralyzed as the truth slammed into me like a car on black ice. Nathan wasn't just hiding something, he was married. At first, denial flooded me. Maybe it was dissolved. Maybe he just hadn't mentioned it. But as I scanned further, my chest constricted. The certificate listed his parents Margaret and William Hale as witnesses, the same people who had hugged me last Christmas, who'd toasted to our family's future. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the page. Somehow, I found the strength to photocopy it, sliding the crisp duplicate into my notebook. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I slipped the document into my purse, hidden like contraband. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. By midnight, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open searching public databases. My fingers flew across the keys, desperate for answers. Within an hour, I found them divorce filings in Maricopa County. Isabel Torres v. Nathan Hale. Filed 8 months ago. The words swam as I read them. Financial misrepresentation, abandonment, fraud, theft of marital assets totaling $42,000. The air left my lungs. Nathan hadn't just been married. He had destroyed her. I printed every page, the machine's fluorescent light burning the evidence into my memory. When the stack was done, my table looked like a crime board. Names, dates, dollar amounts. Allegations of theft and deceit. But the detail that gutted me most wasn't the money. It was a line buried in supporting documents. 1, minor child. Female. Sophia Torres Hale, age 4. I clutched the paper bile rising in my throat. Nathan had a daughter. A little girl with his last name. A child he had never once mentioned. For days, I walked through life like a ghost, smiling at coworkers answering wedding questions while inside my mind screamed. At night, I'd return to the mountain of evidence. Divorce filings, court notices, social media fragments that hinted at Isabel's struggles, fundraising posts, exhausted updates about juggling jobs. Nathan's lies unraveled like cheap thread. His business trips to Phoenix, the vague stories about consulting, the evasive glances whenever I asked about his past. All of it had been cover. He wasn't networking. He was dodging process servers and child support enforcement. And then came the bank records. I had access to our joint account. At first, I believed his explanations withdrawals for deposits catering flowers, but when I cross-referenced them against contracts, nothing aligned. The photographer never received the $200 Nathan claimed. The florist's invoice didn't match the $600 he supposedly paid. Instead, I traced payments to luxury hotels, restaurants, and cities I'd never visited, jewelry stores where receipts bore no resemblance to our wedding purchases. He had been draining our savings in plain sight. I started a notebook, my handwriting cramped with fury. Each entry noted date, amount, and the excuse Nathan had given. Cross-checked against reality, they revealed a man systematically siphoning money under the guise of wedding planning. But Phoenix wasn't the only city. Digging deeper, I found traces of other women. Maria Sanchez Denver, 32, a nurse practitioner. Her name surfaced in a lawsuit against Nathan for unpaid debts tied to a business investment. She'd inherited money from her grandfather, $25,000 that vanished into Nathan's hands. Then came Rebecca Lynn in Portland, a physical therapist. She'd co-signed credit cards with him. Debt collectors were still chasing her for nearly $18,000. Each discovery left me trembling, my chest tight with rage and disbelief. Nathan wasn't just a liar. He was a predator, a man who built false identities to worm into women's lives, drain their resources, and vanish. I plastered my dining room walls with timelines, names, dollar amounts, copies of every document I could print. My modest apartment became an evidence archive, a detective's office. When I sat at the table, papers spread like wings. I felt two versions of myself battling the clerk who craved order and the betrayed woman who wanted revenge. Night after night, I debated confront him now or wait. March into Murphy's Hall with evidence or bide my time until the most public moment. Each path glimmered with temptation. The betrayal wasn't only Nathan's, it was Chloe's too. She had been inserting herself into our relationship for months, comforting him when I pressed too hard, suggesting I give him space, undermining me with those syrupy smiles. I couldn't prove when she crossed the line into his arms, but I knew enough. Still, it wasn't Chloe I wanted to destroy. Not yet. It was Nathan. One detail haunted me most. Sophia, the little girl in Phoenix with his green eyes. Every time I looked at my wedding dress hanging in its protective bag, I thought of her. While I scraped together money for lace overlays, Sophia's mother was working 2 jobs to cover inhalers for a child abandoned by the man now promising me forever. That's when I made my choice. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't cancel, quietly slink away in humiliation. No, I would gather every piece of evidence, every document, every record, and when the moment was right, I would detonate it in front of everyone. Nathan thought he was the con artist, the puppeteer pulling strings, but he didn't know I worked with records for a living, that I'd spent my career catching mistakes, exposing frauds, noticing the details others missed. I was about to turn those skills against him. What I didn't realize then was how much deeper the web ran, how many victims, how many secrets. Each discovery pushed me further from heartbreak and closer to fury. And when the night came to reveal it, the hall would witness more than a ruined wedding. They would see a reckoning. The more evidence I gathered, the more dangerous my silence became. It felt like carrying a live grenade in my purse, its pin already pulled. Every morning when I buttoned my blouse for work at the clerk's office, I reminded myself, not yet, Alice. Wait for the right moment. I could have confronted Nathan the night I first found his marriage certificate. I could have hurled the papers in his face, demanded answers, screamed until my throat tore. But what then? He'd lie, twist the truth, make me doubt my own eyes. No, if I wanted justice, real, undeniable justice, I needed witnesses. I needed my family, his family, every person who had believed his polished smile. So I waited. And while I waited, I built my case. My dining table turned into a battlefield. Manila folders piled high, each one labeled in thick black ink, Isabel Maria Rebecca Bank Records Child Support. I taped timelines to my wall arrows, connecting names and dates, creating a web that revealed Nathan's true pattern. Each evening, I sharpened the picture like a photographer adjusting focus. At night, when the apartment grew too quiet, I practiced what I might say. In the bathroom mirror, I rehearsed lines until I could deliver them steady, not trembling. My voice had to cut like glass. But I wasn't alone in this. I confided in Aunt Linda one Sunday afternoon. We sat at her kitchen table, sunlight slanting across a plate of blueberry muffins she'd baked. Aunt Linda had always been the quiet observer in our family, the one who noticed, even if she didn't always intervene. When I slid the documents toward her, her brow furrowed as she read. "Lord, have mercy," she whispered, flipping through the pages. "Alice, this is criminal." Her validation steadied me. For weeks, I'd worried I was exaggerating, spiraling into paranoia. But Aunt Linda looked me square in the eyes and said, "You're not crazy. He's a predator. And Chloe, well, she's walking straight into his trap." I swallowed hard. "Do I warn her?" Aunt Linda sighed, folding her hands. "If you warn her now, she'll side with him. You know she will? She'll think you're jealous trying to sabotage her happiness. No, sweetheart, you wait. Let the truth come out where no one can deny it. That's the only way she'll ever see." Her words became my anchor. At work, I was meticulous. I copied documents, carefully logged everything. My position at the clerk's office gave me access, but I never crossed a legal line. Everything I uncovered was public record. I just had the patience to follow the trails others ignored. In quiet moments, I thought of Isabel. I imagined her sitting alone with a toddler reading over divorce papers she couldn't enforce because Nathan had vanished. I pictured Maria staring at a depleted inheritance account, Rebecca answering calls from debt collectors. Their voices echoed inside me, urging me not to falter. But revenge wasn't my only motive. Dignity was. For 29 years, I'd been the background daughter, the reliable one, the shadow beside Chloe's glow. Tomorrow was supposed to be my day, the one moment where I stepped fully into the light. They stole that from me. If I couldn't have the wedding, then I would have the truth. One evening, Dad caught me in the backyard, staring at the oak tree we'd grown up climbing. He hadn't said much about the wedding, not like Mom, but that night he lingered. "You've seemed different lately," he said, his voice low. I hesitated, then asked Dad if you knew something terrible about someone I was marrying. "Would you tell me?" He studied me for a long moment, his hands deep in his pockets. "Truth has a way of showing itself, Alice. Question is, will you be ready when it does?" I wanted to tell him everything, but years of silence between us held me back. Still, his words carved into me a reminder that when the moment came, I had to be steady. So, I prepared. I made copies of every key document, marriage certificate, divorce filings, child support case, credit reports. I stored digital backups in a hidden drive, physical copies in my purse. If Nathan tried to deny it, I would lay the evidence before him like a prosecutor in court. And I waited for the perfect stage. Not the altar. That would be too late. Too intimate. I wanted an audience, family, friends, every person who thought Chloe's sparkle excused cruelty, every person who believed Nathan's charm was real. I wanted them all to see. Murphy's Hall was perfect. The rehearsal dinner, the gathering before the wedding. Everyone important would be there, dressed in their best, ready to celebrate. That's where I would strike. The thought gave me chills, half fear, half exhilaration. Would I have the courage? Would my voice hold steady when the moment came? Would I be able to face my mother's dismissive wave, Chloe's smirk, Nathan's mask cracking? Some nights doubt nearly drowned me. Maybe I should run. Call off the wedding, quietly disappear. But then I'd look at Sophia's photo in the court documents, her little dark curls, her wide green eyes, and I knew running wasn't an option. If I stayed silent, I was complicit. So I set my jaw, packed my purse with evidence, and told myself, wait for the right moment, Alice. And when it comes, don't hesitate. I thought waiting would make me calmer, but the closer the rehearsal came, the more the air buzzed with tension I couldn't name. And when the night finally arrived, Murphy's Hall would become more than just a rehearsal. It would become a courtroom, a stage, and a battlefield. Murphy's Hall had been strung with twinkling lights for the rehearsal dinner. Crystal glasses gleamed on white-draped tables, and the smell of roasted chicken drifted from the catering trays. It should have been the happiest night of my life. Instead, I stood frozen in the doorway, watching Chloe twirl in my wedding dress lace, catching in the light like stolen fire. Surprised, she sang, her arm hooked through Nathan's. Around them, relatives gasped, then applauded. My mother clapped like she'd been waiting years for this moment. "Alice, don't pout," she said, voice dripping with dismissal. "Chloe looks radiant. You should be happy for her." The blood pounded in my ears. Happy. Watching my sister draped in the gown I'd sacrificed for clutching the man I'd thought was mine. I stepped forward, my heels sharp against the hardwood floor. "What did you just say?" My voice cracked, smaller than I intended. Nathan shifted uncomfortably, sweat already beading at his hairline. Chloe just smirked, twirling once more. Nathan realized he belongs with me. "Isn't it romantic? We're eloping tonight." The hall erupted in cheers. Aunt Linda's smile faltered, but most faces gleamed with excitement swept into Chloe's theater. I set my purse on a table and unzipped it slowly like a magician preparing for a trick. My fingers brushed the folder's edges, weeks of secrets, lies, and evidence. My heart thudded, but my voice grew stronger. "Romantic," I repeated. Funny that's not the word I'd use. Maybe bigamous, maybe fraudulent. Silence fell. Every eye turned to me. Nathan's face went white. Chloe laughed forced and brittle. Oh, Alice, don't be dramatic. I pulled out my phone, swiping to the first image. I held the screen high, rotating it so the nearest tables could see. This is a marriage certificate. Nathan James Hale and Isabel Torres. Phoenix, Arizona. Dated 2 years ago. Gasps rippled through the hall. Nathan lunged forward. That's not what it looks like, really. I cut him off, swiping to the next, because here's the divorce filing. Abandonment, theft of marital assets, $42,000 gone. My voice was ice. And here's the part you didn't tell me, Nathan. The child, Sophia Torres Hale, 4 years old. Your daughter. The word daughter cracked through the air like a whip. Chloe's smirk shattered. Murmurs rose around us, angry, disbelieving, horrified. Mom pressed a hand to her chest. Alice, stop this nonsense. It's not nonsense, I snapped, turning the screen toward her. It's public record. I found it while processing marriage certificates. My fiancé is still married. And worse, he abandoned his wife and baby with nothing. Chloe's champagne glass slipped shattering against the floor. Nathan. Her voice wavered for the first time. Nathan's phone buzzed loudly on the table. The caller ID flashed with a Phoenix area code. He scrambled to silence it, but the room had already seen. I pulled out the next document, unfolding it with deliberate care. Here's the child support case. 3 years unpaid. $1,700 a month he owes for medical expenses because Sophia has severe asthma. While Isabel worked 2 jobs to pay for inhalers, Nathan was buying you jewelry, Chloe. A sharp intake of breath. Chloe staggered back as if I'd struck her. Still, I wasn't finished. I laid out the photocopies one by one, sliding them across the tablecloth. Maria Sanchez Denver inheritance stolen. Rebecca Lynn Portland credit card fraud, $18,000 in debt. Do you see the pattern? Nathan isn't a fiancé. He's a con artist. Nathan's mask cracked. Sweat streaked his temples. His hands shook so badly he couldn't hold his glass. Alice, please, he whispered, desperation bleeding through. Don't do this here. Here. My laugh was sharp. This is exactly where I do this. In front of the family that enabled Chloe, in front of the mother who always told me I wasn't enough, in front of every person who thought my practicality made me boring. Look at your golden couple now. Mom stepped forward, fury in her eyes. Alice, you're humiliating yourself. No, Mother. I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. I'm humiliating the man who lied, stole, and abandoned his own child, and the sister who helped him play his game. The hall buzzed with whispers. Uncle James leaned forward in his chair, muttering, God Almighty. Nathan's phone rang again. This time he couldn't ignore it. Isabel's name flashed clear across the screen. Chloe's face drained of color. Isabel, who's Isabel? His wife, I said coldly. The woman he never divorced, the mother of his daughter. And she's been trying to serve him papers for months. The double doors creaked. A hush fell as a petite woman with dark hair stepped inside, clutching a manila folder. Isabel Torres. Her eyes swept the room until they landed on Nathan crumpled in his chair. Hello, Nathan, she said evenly. We need to talk. The room erupted. Shouts, gasps, questions flying like arrows. Chloe stumbled away from Nathan, ripping off the veil she'd stolen from my closet. Mom collapsed into a chair, face gray. And Nathan sank to his knees, the weight of his lies finally crushing him. For 29 years, I'd been the overlooked daughter, the shadow. But in that moment, as documents fanned across Murphy's hall and truth detonated like a bomb, I was something else entirely. I was the reckoning. The silence in Murphy's hall didn't last long. Within minutes of Isabel's calm declaration, the sound of sirens flashed through the tall windows. Red and blue lights painted the polished floors, pulsing like a heartbeat no one could ignore. 2 officers stepped through the doors, their voices steady. Official Nathan James Hale. You're under arrest for failure to pay court-ordered child support abandonment and suspected fraud across multiple states. Gasps rippled again. Chairs scraped back. Phones lifted discreetly as relatives recorded the moment Nathan's wrists were cuffed. He didn't fight. He just sagged hollow-eyed as if every ounce of charm had drained out of him. Chloe shrank against the wall, still in my wedding dress. For the first time in her life, she looked small. Stripped of her confidence, she clutched the lace at her chest like it might shield her from the truth. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." But her words sounded thin against the weight of the evidence spread across the table. Mom, pale and trembling, reached for her. "Sweetheart, we'll fix this." But the room had shifted. Aunts, uncles, cousins who had once cheered Chloe now turned away, whispering among themselves. For years they'd seen Mom's favoritism, but tonight it had curdled into something undeniable. Dad, quiet, stoic. Dad finally broke the silence. "Enough, Patricia. No more excuses." His voice shook with suppressed years, and in that moment I saw something crack in him too. The officers led Nathan past me. His eyes flicked to mine, desperate pleading. Once that look would have softened me. Now it felt like a stranger's. I didn't flinch. The doors closed, leaving an echoing emptiness in their wake. Relief didn't come immediately. Instead, a hollow ache settled in my chest. I had exposed him, yes, but what was left, a shredded wedding, a family cracked open, years of scars ripped raw in front of everyone. Cousin Megan squeezed my arm gently. "You were brave," she murmured. Her voice carried no judgment, only truth. Still, I couldn't shake the question gnawing at me. Was this justice or just another wound carved deeper? Isabel approached quietly, her folder tucked under her arm. "You saved more women tonight than you realize," she said. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was firm. "He can't run anymore." I nodded, but when she left, a cold weight lingered. Because exposing Nathan hadn't just destroyed him, it had shattered illusions I'd clung to my whole life. That maybe love, if I worked hard enough, could finally make me the chosen one. Instead, I stood alone in Murphy's hall, my dress still hanging in its bag untouched. They thought they had humiliated me, reduced me to ashes. But what they didn't realize was that ashes can burn hotter than fire. And this wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something I hadn't even named yet. The next morning, I stood on my porch as dawn spread pale light across the street. For the first time in months, my chest felt open, unshackled. There would be no wedding bells, no photographs to frame, but there was something better, freedom. I'd survived betrayal, humiliation, and the truth of a family that had never chosen me. Yet somehow I was still here, stronger, sharper, no longer waiting for approval. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, or had someone steal what was meant for this you are not powerless. And if this story gripped you, hit subscribe and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in my place?